Hi everyone. You're here because you want to really understand complex situations, maybe get a clearer picture without getting bogged down. So today, we're tackling something that definitely needs that clarity. The escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. This is as of May 2025, right after Operation Sindoor.
Yeah, it's a very fluid situation, potentially quite dangerous. It all kicked off with those Indian airstrikes. They stated they were hitting terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan.
Right, places like Bahawalpur, Murdke, Muzaffarabad were mentioned.
Exactly, and almost immediately there were reports of civilian casualties, which always complicates things.
And Pakistan's reaction was pretty swift, wasn't it? Vowing retaliation, claiming they downed Indian jets, though India denies that.
Correct. Plus, we've seen heavy shelling back and forth across the line of control in Kashmir.
And then India suspended the Indus Waters Treaty. That's huge, right? That water sharing agreement.
Oh, absolutely. A major move. And on top of that, a definite spike in cyber activity. Reports of attacks on Indian defense sites. So that's kind of the messy picture we're starting with.
Okay. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to take all that and sort of unpack where things might go. Like, what are the likely escalation steps over, say, the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Precisely. We want to offer a structured way for you to think about what could happen next, and importantly, why certain paths seem more probable than others right now.
All right, let's dig in. Level 1 escalation. You're saying this is basically happening now, very likely to continue. Sustained border stuff plus cyber warfare.
Yeah, that's pretty much nailed on. What you'll likely see day to day is, well, more of the same, but maybe intensified.
Yeah.
Artillery duels across the Lorry, sniper fire becoming more frequent, and definitely more drone surveillance, both sides trying to get eyes on the other. Constant probing, really.
And the cyber side, you said that's ramping up. What does that look like? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, well, we should probably expect more sophisticated attacks hitting critical infrastructure.
Critical infrastructure meaning?
Things like power grids, telecom networks, banking systems, government websites. The aim isn't just to cause chaos, though that's part of it. It's also about, undermining public confidence.
Making people feel the government can't protect them.
Exactly. And signaling your own offensive cyber power. Imagine a major power grid going down, the knock-on effects, the panic, the economic hit. It goes way beyond just knocking a website offline.
And besides these direct state actions, military and cyber, what else could stir the pot on the ground?
There's a real risk of proxy insurgent attacks inside Kashmir. Maybe non-state groups, but potentially with some level of backing.
And those could be symbolic, but the risk.
The risk of civilian casualties is tragically high with those. And if that happens, you get public outrage, demands for much stronger action. It fuels the fire.
So at this level 1 stage, how serious is the danger of it all just exploding into something much bigger?
I'd say the risk of a full-blown conventional war at level 1 is moderate. Both sides are showing resolve, sure, but they're probably still working within some unspoken tense limits. At this point, neither likely wants that bigger war.
Okay. And how long could this sort of simmering crisis go on?
This is the immediate picture. It could persist for, say, the next week, maybe 7 days, give or take.
And how are India and Pakistan likely positioning themselves, strategically speaking?
India's posture is likely focused on deterrence, signaling strength, readiness to hit back hard, while maybe continuing some limited offensive ops against perceived threats.
And Pakistan?
Pakistan's probably prioritizing retaliation, actions designed to show they aren't backing down, maybe score some symbolic points in response to those initial Indian strikes. Carefully measured, though.
What about the rest of the world? What are they likely doing or saying?
Initially, you'll hear the usual calls for restraint, strong statements from the US, the UAE, China. But unless things really go south quickly, probably no active hands-on involvement right away.
Okay, that covers level 1. Let's look at level 2. Tactical aerial retaliation. Maybe even missile exchanges. That sounds like a definite step up.
Oh, it absolutely is. And this is where the risk of miscalculation really jumps. If Pakistan feels it needs to hit back harder than just border skirmishes or cyber stuff,
they might go for actual strikes.
Yeah, possibly limited precision strikes, maybe air power, maybe missiles, targeting Indian military installations, probably in Jammu and Kashmir. Think bases or logistics hubs near places like Kupwara, Uri, or Akhnor.
And India's response to that?
Likely swift. and could escalate things further. They try to intercept anything incoming, obviously. But if they take significant losses,
Then what?
then you could see retaliatory Indian airstrikes, perhaps deeper into Pakistan, or maybe even the use of their BrahMos cruise missiles against Pakistani military bases.
You mentioned the risk of civilian deaths or friendly fire goes up sharply here. Why specifically at this stage?
Well, when you have faster, more complex operations like air and missile strikes, the chances of mistakes just skyrocket. Targeting errors, military sites being close to towns, friendly fire in the confusion.
Yeah.
It all becomes much more likely.
And civilian deaths, as we said, can just pour fuel on the fire.
Precisely. It creates that dangerous cycle of revenge.
You also highlighted a high risk of miscalculation. What kind of mistakes are we talking about?
At this point, everyone's under huge pressure, probably working with incomplete intelligence. It gets much easier to misread the other side's intentions.
So a limited strike might look like the start of something bigger.
Exactly. And trigger a response that's way out of proportion. You've got the fog of war, nationalism running high, the pressure to look strong. It's just a volatile mix where things can spiral accidentally.
What's the time frame for this if level 2 happens?
You could see this unfolding maybe in the 7 to 10 day window following that initial crisis point.
Are there specific things we should be watching for, signs that we're heading towards this kind of tactical escalation?
Yeah, definitely. Keep an eye on movements of Indian Air Force squadrons. If they start shifting more fighters to bases near the border, that's a big flag.
Okay, what else?
Any confirmed reports that Pakistan is mobilizing its quick reaction forces? Those units are designed for rapid crisis deployment. That'd be concerning. And watch the airspace. If either country starts restricting civilian flights, especially over North India or near Lahore, that strongly suggests military air activity is about to ramp up, or already has.
How would the world react if we get to this point? Direct military exchanges.
You'd almost certainly see an emergency UN Security Council session called, very likely.
And the big powers.
The U.S. would probably get more active, maybe with back-channel diplomacy, trying to cool things down. China, well, they'd likely stay officially neutral, but express more concern, especially about that Indus Waters Treaty suspension. That affects their interests, too.
Right. The UNSC getting involved signals it's seen as really serious globally.
Absolutely. It's their main body for peace and security. An emergency session means alarm bells are ringing.
Okay, moving up the ladder again. Level 3. Economic warfare, weaponizing water, and intense information ops. This feels like a different kind of battleground.
It is. The focus shifts here, away from purely military clashes towards applying pressure through money, resources like water, and manipulating information.
That Indus Waters Treaty moved by India, you said that's potentially part of this.
It's a prime example. If India were to actually significantly reduce water flow downstream, say, from dams on the Chenab or Jhelum rivers,
Which flow into Pakistan.
right into Pakistan's Punjab province, its agricultural heartland, the impact could be huge.
Creating panic, you think? Actual hardship.
Could be. Water shortages affecting farms, which is massive for Pakistan's economy, but also just drinking water for people. It's using a non-military tool with potentially severe consequences. Water has always been a friction point, but actual weaponization like this would be a major escalation.
How could Pakistan hit back economically?
They have options, though perhaps fewer direct ones. They could shut down the border trade points that are still open, disrupting things further.
Not a huge amount of trade anyway, is there?
No, but it's symbolic and hits local economies. They could also try diplomatic pressure, maybe through the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or lean on China to target Indian exports or investments somehow.
And alongside this economic pressure, you expect the info war to get really nasty.
Oh yeah, aggressive media psyops from both sides, trying to shape opinion at home and abroad.
How? What kind of tactics?
You might see things like deepfakes, those fabricated videos, or audio clips spreading like wildfire. Massive disinformation campaigns on social media. The aim: stir up nationalism, paint the other side as the villain, maybe even try to erode morale by spreading fake news about casualties or defeats.
So fake reports of battles, exaggerated losses.
Exactly. Anything to rally their own side and demoralize the other.
What's the overall risk here? Widespread disruption, instability.
The risk of systemic impact, I'd say, goes up to moderate to high at this level. You can see markets taking a hit, not just in India and Pakistan, but regionally.
Supply chains getting messed up.
Definitely. Think about trade routes connecting India, the Gulf, Pakistan. They could face serious problems. Overall, regional stability would definitely take a knock. Investor confidence drops. Maybe capital starts leaving.
And the timeline for this kind of economic and info warfare phase?
This could plausibly emerge in the, say, 10 to 14-day period after the crisis starts.
Which brings us, finally, to level 4, strategic brinkmanship. This sounds like, well, the edge of the cliff.
It is. It's the least likely scenario we're mapping out, but yeah, the consequences are the gravest. The trigger would probably have to be something truly catastrophic.
Like what?
Like an Indian strike causing mass civilian deaths, maybe over 50 people in Pakistani city. Or, conversely, a Pakistani missile hitting deep inside India, causing major damage or loss of life, hitting something strategic.
If, God forbid, something like that happened, what actions will we see then?
In that kind of supercharged atmosphere, both sides might put their nuclear-capable delivery systems on higher alert.
You mean missiles like India's Agni and Pakistan's Shaheen?
Exactly. Visible signs of readiness. You might also see big public military mobilizations, columns of tanks moving to the border, that sort of thing. And potentially one or both sides trying to lock down the airspace completely over Jammu and Kashmir. Air denial.
The nuclear question looms largest here, obviously. You said it's extremely unlikely, but what makes it even a remote possibility, and what increases the danger?
It is still extremely unlikely. The consequences are just unthinkable for everyone, but the risk would be higher than at any other point. You have nuclear doctrines, India's cold start, Pakistan's full spectrum deterrence.
Which basically suggests different thresholds for using them.
Right, and those doctrines would be under immense pressure in this kind of crisis. The decision to actually cross that threshold is almost unimaginable, but with extreme pressure, high emotions, the risk of miscalculation we talked about, it just becomes a more dangerous possibility than normal. Command and control would be incredibly stressed.
How would the world react to this level? Actual brinkmanship.
Immediately. Intensely. The U.S. might send senior military liaisons, maybe from CENTCOM or Indo-PACOM, right into the region to talk directly to both sides' militaries.
Try to slam on the brakes.
Yeah. China might push for intervention through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, and you definitely see urgent talks at the UN Security Council about emergency sanctions.
So, putting it all together, all these potential levels, what's your best estimate for the most probable outcome in the short term, say the next couple of weeks?
Based on how things look right now, my analysis points towards something we could call escalated containment. I put the probability around maybe 65%.
Escalated containment, what does that actually look like?
I mean, the lossy clashes, the covert stuff, that likely continues. We might see Pakistan undertake 1 or 2 limited retaliatory strikes, but probably more symbolic than militarily decisive, aimed at showing resolve, not provoking a massive Indian counterattack. And crucially, I think diplomatic efforts would start to gain real traction within that 2-week window, probably led by countries like the UAE, maybe the US countries that have decent ties with both sides.
Trying to pull them back from the brink.
Exactly. Pushing hard for de-escalation to prevent that slide into full-scale war or anything approaching the nuclear threshold, containing the conflict even though it's at a higher, more dangerous level than usual.
Okay, that sounds, well, perhaps the least worst outcome, given the starting point. You also laid out some real-time indicators we should all watch. Can you just quickly recap those? What tells us things are moving up a level?
Sure. Big one. Civilian airspace closures over North India or near Lahore. That screams imminent tactical escalation, likely involving air power.
Got it.
Next, confirmed reports of major troop movements, specifically India's X Corps in Kashmir, or Pakistan's the Second Corps, a major strike formation. That signals serious mobilization for potentially bigger action. Then, water levels. Keep an eye on satellite monitoring of the Chenab and Jhelum rivers. Unusual drops could mean that level 3 water wetidization is actually happening.
Right.
Also, listen closely to official statements. What India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, says, or the head of Pakistan's military PR wing, the DGISPR. Their words often signal high-level strategic intent.
Then, finally,
watch the diplomats. If you see increased shuttle diplomacy, especially high-level U.S. officials from CENTCOM or the ambassador flying back and forth, that's usually a strong sign of intense external pressure to de-escalate.
This has been incredibly insightful, though pretty sobering, too. It really lays bare how fast things can escalate and just how many different factors, military, cyber, economic, even water, are tangled up together.
Yeah, it underscores just how fragile stability can be in that region and why understanding these potential pathways is so critical, not just to guess what might happen, but hopefully to inform efforts to, manage the risks.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider all that interconnectedness, economic hits, cyber warfare, resource disputes leaking across borders alongside traditional military tension, it really poses a question for all of us. In this globalized world we live in, How can conflicts that seem localized, like this one, actually trigger much broader, maybe unforeseen consequences way beyond the immediate region?
That's the crucial question. The ripple effects can be surprising.
Something definitely for you, the listener, to mull over. Thanks so much for guiding us through this complex deep dive.
My pleasure. Stay informed.